Hello friends, welcome to JavaEE Servlet's tutorial. Now we will go to Eclipse demo. So you are watching the final part of the sub-series on the JavaEE Servlet's tutorial. So in the last video, we saw that we are going to create 3 web parts. One is the HTML file that we will use to check the Servlet Events and Listener. The second part is creating the Servlet Events demo. The third part is creating the simple listener, which implements ServletRequestListener and HttpSessionAttributeListener. Now we will go to Eclipse demo. Now we will open Eclipse Neon. So first let us close all the files. Okay, under web content, we will first create our HTML file. So we are naming this as Servlet event ex.html. So we will accept the default. So inside the body, if you see, we are creating a form tag. So the method is post, and this will send the post request to Servlet events demo. Then this field set is set to show the this particular content like a radio group. I mean group, like a group box. So here we are fixing the section variable as ABC123, and inside that we have one input element. So this is where we will give the value for the session variable ABC123. So at present here we are hard coding it. This is because we just want to experiment how the HTTP session attribute listener works. Next we have 3 submit button, and we have add, replace and remove as the value. And if you see name is action, that means the Servlet events demo will use the get parameter by supplying the action. Then based on the value, we will come to know whether we need to add a variable, session variable, or we need to replace or remove. So that's all on this HTML side. Now we will move to our second web part. That means we will go to Servlet. So to create the Servlet, we are just copying this name. So this is the package. So in the package, I am right clicking, then choosing new Servlet. So class name here we are giving it as a Servlet events demo. So we don't want do get. Anyhow, we can have both also. But what we are going to use is a do post. Why? Because from that form, the action is a post. So we will override do post. All right, so this is where we are going to perform the action. So the action is add, remove, and replace. Whenever the request lands here, a event will get fired. So we already saw that. And after the processing is done here, the request object will get destroyed. That means this particular object. So there is a event that we will tie up later. So first we will implement this. So inside the action, we will use the HTTP session to add and remove the stuff. First, we are getting the submitted form field values. So the first one, what we are getting is the seshvar value, session variable value. Then we want to know the action, whether it is add, remove, or replace. If I go to our HTML file, you can see that the input field, we named it as sessionVar value. So whatever user enters on this text field, that will be retrieved here in the str value, and the action will be stored here in this string variable. The form will be submitted multiple times. So first we need to check whether session variable already exists as part of a previous requests. So first we retrieve the session from the request object. We store that here in the HTTP session. Then from the session we make call to get attribute, and the attribute name what we pass is ABC123. So if the request is the first request, this will return nothing. That means the val will be holding null value. Val in the sense of this. Okay, we will import HTTP session from javax.servlet.http package. Next, if you see, we already have the action. That means we know which submit is done by the user. Here, if you see, there are 3 submit action, and name we gave it as action. So that's useful to get the action using the get parameter. And based on the return value, add, remove, replace, we form a switch case here. So the action is returned using the get parameter. Then we form a switch based on this action. After that, in the case, we check whether it is a add action or remove or replace. So if it is a add, we first check val is null. So if val is null, then we will set the attribute. So if user clicks multiple times the add button without changing the value, we will not create a new session. So we will go with the existing session variable. So if it is already created, we will hold whatever is there previously. So that's why we are checking null. So for the very first time, the user can create the session variable by clicking the add button. So that's how we created this example. Here, the purpose of this example is just to explore the listener. So that's why we just kept this conditional check. Next, if you look at the remove action, we are checking the attribute is already there. So if that is the case, then from session, we will make a call to the method remove attribute. For the remove attribute, we will pass the value ABC123. For set attribute, we will pass ABC123. And if you see, we hard coded it. That's why in the HTML also we said that session variable is abc123, but value is dynamic, so that we retrieved here using the get parameter seshware value. So that's the input, whatever user types on that input field. So when it is add, we are setting the attribute. When it is remove, we check whether the session attribute already exists, and if it already exists, we make a call to remove attribute. And if you see, when it is a replace, we simply make a call to set attribute once again, and we use the same the hard-coded attribute name, and we set the new value. So if it already had some value in it, that will be replaced by the new incoming value. So that's all here. So this servlet is enough to experiment the servlet request listener as well as HTTP session attribute listener. So here, if you see, we are modifying the session attribute, right? Session. Then we are getting that we are setting the attribute, removing the attribute, set attribute. So this will actually replace if there is a value that already exists. And all three action that we will tie up with the listener. Now we will go to the third part. So to create the listener, just right click on the package, choose new, then select listener. So since we clicked on the package name, package is already picked, and class name we are giving it as a simple listener. And if you see, Eclipse displays all the supported listener. There are servlet context event, there are HTTP session, and there are servlet request event. So in this example, we are going to put a listener for request. We want to watch when the request is initiated and when it is destroyed. So selecting this, I want to implement servlet request listener. Then HTTP session attribute listener. So you can see the other important listeners also here. So they work the same way. So this demo will give an idea of how to handle the servlet related event and catch that in the listener. So this too is enough for our example. Let me click next, and you can see these are all the interface it will implement. One is from javax.servlet.servletRequestListener. Another one is from javax.servlet.http session attribute listener. Okay, so it provided all the methods. Let me do the cleanup here. So the code cleanup is done, and you can see there is a request destroyed and then request initialized. So these two are for servlet request listener. That means it's coming from this servlet request listener, and there are three more. That's for attribute added. So here it just says attribute added. That means HTTP session attribute added, and you can see it's a overload, and the event it receives is HTTP session binding event. The previous one receives servlet request event. So in the request destroyed, first we will import this servlet context from javax.servlet. So the argument passed is servlet request event. From that event arg0, we are getting the servlet context. Then we use the servlet context to make a call to log. So we are logging some information and that will appear on the console window. So here get servlet context name will give the web application name. Our web application name is servlet examples. So we say a request for servlet example destroyed. Why? Because the method here is a request destroyed. So the same way we can put a logging for initialized also. So we are getting the servlet context sc, then sc.log. Here also we should have kept sc.log. Then we say request initiated for, then we are specifying our web application name. So before we go to attribute listener, we will first test this. So at present where Wildfly is stopped, we will start it. So here you can see that it is started, and when you go to servers you can see started and synchronized. So if it is not published, then you have to choose add and remove. Then this will be in the left side available. You have to click and choose add, then click finish. So that will deploy the servlet examples. Now so this is the HTML we want to execute. We will choose run on server. So we asked to display this HTML. So this will be the request, and you can see that request initialized for servlet example and request destroyed. Now we will implement the attributes. I mean the attribute listener, the HTTP session attribute listener. So which is not yet implemented here. Now we will implement that. So in the attribute added, first we say that we get the so this is the HTTP session binding event arg0. From arg0 first we get the session, then from there we are getting the servlet context. So we are storing the servlet context here. So we are getting the servlet context just to perform logging. So we are making call to log. Then from arg1 we are getting the name. So this will give the HTTP session attributes name. So the name here is ABC123. So this is the name and the value is dynamic. So here we get the name, then we say added with value. From the same incoming argument we are using the get value. So get value returns object, that's why we are typecasting it to string. So if you see, you will get what is the attribute name and what value is added. The same goes for removed. So same code. Only thing is we just changed the logging stuff. Session name, your session variable name. I mean the session attribute variable name here we are printing. After that we are stating it is removed because the function is attribute removed. Then we are saying it had value. Then we are getting the value. So this is the attribute with value, this one that is removed. Next we want to log the replaced. So it's a bit tricky. Here we need to say what is the old value and what is the new value. So what we do, first we get the HTTP servlet context, then we get the session also. We will import it. So context is ready. This is for logging. Session is to know the current value, because here argument 0, if you make a call to get name and get value, if you see here, first we make use of the HTTP session, whatever is it returned. So here from this session we use the get attribute method, and for get attribute we pass the name. The name is nothing but ABC123. So this will return the current value, that means the new value. So whatever this arg0 get value returns, that will be the replaced value. I mean the old value, not replaced, old value. So this will give the, I mean the HTTP session binding event arg0.getValue will give the old value. So to have the new value, we are retrieving the session, HTTP session. Then we make use of get attribute. The set attribute is already done by here in the replace set attribute. We want to get this value. So from our HTTP session, when we make a call to get attribute, we will retrieve the new value, so that we are storing in the string. Then just like the previous, we are just stating a session, the session variable name. So value is replaced. Then we are saying old value, and if you see this argument, session binding event will give old value only, so we won't get new value. To get the new value, we are retrieving the HTTP session, then we use the get attribute, then we are printing that also. Now we will go and republish it. Here I am going for a full publish. You can see it is undeployed, servletexamples.var. Then the var file is deployed, and you can see now it is synchronized. That means we made these changes, right? So now we made it synchronized. Now we will run this. I'm choosing run on server. Now we will add some value. You can see the request initiated for servlet example session abc123 added with value abc123. Then the request is destroyed. So these three messages are printed from our listener. Now we will go back and we will replace this value. So the old value is abc123 and we are replacing that with the new value abc1234. So the second request is initialized for servlet examples. This is our web application. Session abc123's value is replaced. Old value 123, new value is 1234. After that, the request is destroyed. So if you see here, our web container is calling the listeners properly. So we haven't yet removed. We go back and we will remove this. And you can see that request initialized for servlet example session abc123 removed. It had value 1234 because we replaced it in the previous request. Remove this. This will unpublish our application. And you can see undeployed servlet example.var. Then we will stop our server. Wildfly server is stopped. That's all here in this video. Thank you for watching. Bye.